Hey, this is JC and welcome to Small Brick City, where we want to help you realize your dream of building a custom LEGO city regardless of the space you have. In a previous video, I discussed tips and tricks on how to build a LEGO Expert Modular Building. If you haven't watched that video, check out the link above or in the description below. That video focused on inset buildings, meaning modular buildings that are in between other buildings, and I also shared basic building techniques for MOCs. In this video, we're going to have a look at corner expert modular buildings, as well as more sophisticated tips and tricks, and I'll also highlight even more characteristics of modular buildings in general. So do check out the first video before you watch this one. Thanks to all the people who left comments in the previous video. A shout out to Max Clark in particular, who raised a couple of points which I'll go through here as well. Thanks, Max. Let's first talk about the modular buildings. And we have two of them in front of me. These are official LEGO sets. This is the brick bank, and over here we have the corner garage. They are both corner modular buildings and are designed to be placed at the end of a row of modular buildings. So if you have a single row of buildings, you would place either one on either side. And generally, the way they're designed, they can be either placed on the left and right, depending on how you want to place them in your LEGO city. However, if you place two rows of modulars back to back to create a single block, each end of the block will contain two modulars back to back, just like this. So if you're looking down a row of modulars, this would represent one end of the block with these two corners back to back. Then there'll be more inset buildings followed by two more corners at the other end. These two corner modulars represents two types of corner builds that you typically see in LEGO. One is basically a block. So it's a corner block with two straight sides. The other is the angled corner modular building. In this case, there's even a recess because there's a little driveway for the gas station. But builds like this, the Palace Cinema, and the very first one, the Cafe Corner, all have an angled look with some kind of 45-degree cutoff at the front corner. In the square blocks, such as the Brick Bank as well as the Grand Emporium, it's basically a big block on two sides, just like that. So they're both different in looks, and if you intend to build your own corner build, you would have to make a decision whether you want to go with an angled look or a straight build. Naturally, with corner modulars, you have two sides which are adjacent to each other that face the front. And that means, if we look at it from this side, we have two fronts for each corner building. Unlike an inset building, you generally have just one side, which is the front, and then you have the back. And the designs or look of the front and the back can be completely different. But with a corner build, you definitely need much more organic flow between one side and the other because it is a corner. So it would be very strange if one side was black over here and one side was white, or the design was completely different. So at a certain degree, especially when you're working with a single building, you need to have some continuity in terms of the design. And if you're using an angled build such as the corner garage or the Palace Cinema, that's even more important. You need that flow for the entire building. So building a corner modular building is actually more difficult than an inset building from the design perspective. If you're new to building MOCs, that's my own creations, or you want to try your hand at building your first modular building, my suggestion is to start with an inset building. It is easier. And when you gain experience, your skills improve and your confidence goes up, you can tackle a corner build. Let's have a look at the back of the corner buildings. And here we have the back of the Brick Bank and the corner garage. And let's have a look at the Brick Bank first, because it is what it is. There's no back door for this build, and not all corner builds have a back door. And this one in particular, it's not even pretty. I think all these bricks and what you see, the pattern, is just the result of what bricks were used in order to create the interior. So it's pretty straightforward, but there's no back door. For the corner garage, there's a bit more design, and there is a back door. And typically for corner modulars which have a back door, there's always an indent or cut in at the back corner of the building. And this is almost necessary because if you were to place another building next to it, you need space for the door to be able to open. You do not want to have it right here just in case it may hit a design feature of another building, even though there generally is some space allowance at the back of all modular buildings. Or consider if another corner build was here And if the door was here, just imagine if this brick bank was here and you had a back door, there would be no way to open this door because the brick bank is built all the way to the end of the base plate. So it is a necessity to have this indentation so that minifigs can get out the back door and run out to the alley. If you have bought any LEGO modular building before, you know that there are Technic bricks built into the base, and for corner builds they're built on two sides. Well, even with the inset builds, they're built on either side. And these Technic bricks basically come with connectors which you can put in, and the idea is so that you can connect the different modular buildings together to hold them stable and keep them in line. Personally, from day one, I've never used the connector pins to connect modulars. The main reason is I'm always moving my modulars around. Even when they're placed in my LEGO city, I'm always moving things, shifting things around, and the pins would just make things more inconvenient and get in the way. But what about you? Do you have a LEGO city? And if you have modular buildings, do you use the Technic connectors with the pins? Or do you just leave them out as I do? Let me know in the comments. If you want to build your first corner modular, even if you've built inset buildings before, my advice is the same as I gave in the previous video, and that is to start with a half modular size building. Now, all modulars are built on a 32 stud by 32 stud base plate, so I recommend that you start with one that's built on a 16 by 32 stud base plate. That's half the size, and I think this is the perfect size to start with. I don't recommend a smaller size such as an 8 by 8 for several reasons. In order to get all the details for both the outside and inside, you need enough space to work with. Besides just learning to build structurally sound buildings, you want to be able to learn how to design and balance space. That is the use of space. So you need to know how to place doors in relation to windows and other access points like stairs. And this requires space. If you work with too small space, it's really tough to figure things out and they might just get in the way. You also want to practice how to detail the interior of buildings unless you're not interested in that aspect of the modular buildings. If you have too small space, it's very tough to design the interior along with the stairs and the windows and the access points. Now, I'm not saying that you can't build a small tiny building. It is possible to build a highly detailed small building on the inside and the outside, but you need a certain amount of experience and skills to be able to do so. If not, it can just be quite frustrating. So start off with a half-size building. I think that's the perfect size so that you don't have to spend so much time, effort, and bricks in order to create a building, but it gives you enough space to do all the experimentation you need, make all the mistakes you need, and figure out how to utilize space within the minifig scale. And here's an example of a half expert modular corner building. It is built on a base plate measuring 16 studs by 32 studs deep, and it is my mock of a corner deli as well as a newsstand with a lawyer's office above it. This part here was built from a corner deli, but it's basically completely remocked and rebuilt, but it definitely looks a lot like the original. I call this a split design, a bit like the brick bank and the detective's office, in the sense that it looks like different buildings are basically built together or built back to back or next to each other on a single base plate. But in terms of the build construction, they actually are built together and integrated together for stability, but they look like separate buildings. This corner build was built a bit differently from other corner builds in the sense that I never intend for this particular build to be placed against another corner build. That's why the sidewalk comes all the way around to the back, so you can't butt this up against another building. So it is really designed just to be a corner building at the end of a single row of modulars, and it serves that function in my LEGO city. One slightly more sophisticated technique that you can use for corner buildings is to create a corner build of a window or door, or you can do it for every floor to create an angled facade like this. Now this can't be done for inset buildings, so you can take advantage of the fact that it's a corner build and create a corner like that. It's a bit like the corner garage, but in the case of the corner garage, basically the whole facade was at an angle, and that really takes up a lot of space, meaning you don't have much interior space. But if you just want to create a short angle, maybe of just one window or maybe two or three, you can use this particular technique and it will really make your corner build stand out. I achieved this particular technique using hinging plates like this. and I've shared how to do it in a separate video. You can check out that link in the card above or in the description. It's not as straightforward as it seems, as you do need to figure out offsets so that the hinging plates can work, but don't worry, my video covered all of that. There are also 1x2 plates with curved ends, and that's used in the corner garage because it allows you to easily rotate the plate to create angles. You can also use a prefab Lego piece like this. This is a door frame which creates that 45-degree angle as you need. This might suit your needs because it's very easy to create and you don't have to worry about offsets. But of course, you're then locked into the look of this particular door frame. As you can see, even with a half modular size building, you can get a lot of textures, details, and variety in the build. Imagine if this was double the size for a full modular. It'll just take so much more parts, it'll take more time, and it doesn't necessarily double my skill level or experience simply because you're always replicating it rather than trying out many different new techniques. And that's one reason I suggest starting with a half modular building. To end the video, I'm going to elaborate on certain points I made in the previous video on getting started with your modular building mock. And let's just assume for the sake of this discussion that you're building it on a 16x32 stud base plate. One of the things I talked about is laying out 1x something long plates to create the layout of your build. And this serves several purposes. One, it raises your bricks that you're going to put on top by one plate high. And the reason why this is important is because generally you would tile the interior of your builds, and that interior will create one thickness of a plate, and therefore you want your wall or the bricks of the wall to start off not below the tiles but on the same level as the tiles. Even if you don't tile your interior, generally you tile the sidewalk. And I should mention that all expert Lego modular buildings, by default, the sidewalks use dark gray, and you'd often have a curb made from 1x something long plates. You could plate it all across, but very often you see a grill piece like this to create some kind of drainage. So this just gives a bit more visual variety to your sidewalk. As mentioned in the previous video, we usually use 6 studs for the front sidewalk. That's a good gauge to start off with, and that's why you have 2 studs here, 4 and 6. And this is the entire sidewalk, and the building begins here. And I laid out my entire building with these black plates, and I put in a bit of tiles just to show you the effect of how it would look like. So as you can see, the sidewalk itself is already one tile or one plate high, and therefore you'd want to raise your building or where the bricks start by using these plates. Here's one thing to take note of after you've laid out the footprint for your building, and that is if you're building interior walls. Let's say you decide to build a toilet because you've come to realize that toilets are really important in Lego buildings. So you take some plates again and you lay out the footprint of your toilet, and let's assume that this is the cubicle. So over here is where the door would be, and we would have walls over here and here for privacy for your minifig. What you've done by laying these plates is to then ensure that the exterior wall and the interior wall are aligned at the top, because at some point of the build, whether it's in the middle or at the top of the level, you want to ensure that you have plates that secure the internal wall with this exterior wall. And this is important not just for the structure of the internal wall, because you can see it's really not sound if it's not secured to the outside, but it makes your overall build much more secure. And as far as possible, you always want to build the most structurally sound Lego building you can build. In a future video, I'm going to talk about color palettes and the choice of colors you can use, and how to create very interesting Lego walls for your modular buildings, because I know it can be pretty tough when you're putting together a building and you look at a wall. It can look visually very boring. So how can you create interesting designs without using too many parts, but at the same time create a very aesthetic, nice look to your wall? I hope you enjoyed this video on tips and tricks on how to build your own corner Lego modular building. If you have any feedback or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.